The other one that I think the one that comes up that is not as obvious to us is, what about these translation instruments? He described the Urim and Thummim. So what are those translation instruments is the next question. How has God spoke to his prophets in the past is also a related question that will go along with this. Here's a great depiction, a Rembrandt picture of the writing on the wall and Belshazzar seeing that writing on the wall. They're sitting there defiling the plates and other paraphernalia they took from the temple, and it is on the wall they see a hand appear, and the writing come and tells them that Jerusalem will fall. But in that writing, the glowing writing that they see needs to be interpreted by a prophet, someone with a gift, a seer. And so they find Daniel, and Daniel interprets the message on the wall that was written by the finger of God, and shining letters. And so the writing is on the wall. This is an important idiom in America that represents the fall is inevitable, and the writing is on the wall. It's so prevalent. This is an obvious story where God reveals something to his prophets in a similar way that Joseph Smith described as a person with a gift, a seer, someone who can interpret it through the power of God. And so there it is, the writing on the wall. Now, this also demonstrates the concept of seeing something. Here is writing that Daniel clearly sees. The other obvious example in the Old Testament is written by the finger of God. Here's another Rembrandt painting depicting Moses this time with the tablet that he receives from God, and the writing is inscribed in the tablets. So this is God's commandments. So the Word of God inscribed by the finger of God, which they can read, and given to his prophets. This seems like especially an obvious pattern that reflects something that Joseph Smith was doing. Though, of course, the parallel is unhistorical, it certainly is a parallel that could be made with other scriptures and other scriptural stories. The ones that are more relevant come from the Book of Mormon. This is the Liahona, and the description of the Liahona is a ball of curious workmanship, and its curious workmanship is part of its way to reveal the Word of God to Lehi and Nephi. It has two spindles, one points to food and one points to the direction out of the wilderness. But in addition to that, there is this writing that appears on this ball, writing that appears to the prophets, writing that gives them revelation from God. Here's some of the descriptions from the Book of Mormon. And it came to pass that the voice of the Lord said unto him, Look. So think about D&C 3. He can see something that he sees. So the same descriptive qualities. So look upon the ball and behold the things which are written. And it came to pass that when my father beheld the things which are written upon the ball, and there were also written upon the ball new writings, which was plain to be read. So he's reading, he's seeing, they're being written, removed, and rewritten by God, which did give us understanding in concerning the ways of the Lord. This was revelation. And it was written and changed from time to time, according to the faith and diligence which we gave unto it. Think about Joseph Smith using the ancient seer stones when he tries to translate with Oliver in Fayette at the Whitmer House. At one point he was angry with Emma, and his anger with Emma stopped his ability from receiving or seeing the words of God on the instrument that was given to him. His righteousness and his faith was important to receiving that, just like the Liahona. And thus we see that by small means the Lord can bring about great things. So simply reading something off of a device prepared by God is a small means. Simply reading. That is translation. Simply reading. But great things can come to pass like the Book of Mormon. Emphasized once again, very great example of a device being used where letters and writing is written on a ball that is read by a prophet and received as revelation. The other one is Mosiah's interpreters. There's actually two interpreters that emerge here. Mosiah interprets a rock a large stone that has writing on it, and he apparently has interpreters at that point, Mosiah II. He interprets the ancient writing with those seer stones, or those interpreters, and then he receives more interpreters that come with the 24 gold plates described in the Book of Mormon. Here's how he describes that he receives this revelation. He receives the translation. And specifically, this is different than those other examples, other than Belshazzar, where there is translation. Here is a translation with instruments that Joseph Smith apparently later receives. He says, I can assuredly tell thee, O king, of a man that can translate the records, for he has wherewith that he can look and translate all records that are of ancient date, and it is a gift from God. Here's this gift from God, and he receives the translation from God, and he looks at the translators, and it says, and no man can look in them except he be commanded, lest he should look, for he ought not to perish. And whosoever is commanded to look in them, the same is called a seer. Just like Joseph the seer, who uses these instruments. So with those instruments in mind, it'll give us an idea of what Joseph is doing. So how many instruments did Joseph use to translate the Book of Mormon? Generally, we have always said that it's just the Urim and Thummim. A biblical device is all we describe it as. But clearly there are other devices, and these devices are important. So did Joseph have but one translation device? So the first one, which are the Nephite interpreters, those interpreters that came with the gold plates. A breastplate, the interpreters, and the gold plates were placed into that stone box that was prepared by Moroni and meant for Joseph Smith. Joseph Smith retrieves them, and he has these specific interpreters. So where did these come from? These are what we usually call the Urim and Thummim, making them more biblical rather than Book of Mormon-ish. So how many instruments did Joseph use to translate the Book of Mormon? So this is a question that we certainly can answer, but we need a little bit more information before we move to that.